is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Becki Gray with the John Locke Foundation and also Carolina Journal, John Hood with the John Locke Foundation, Chris Fitzsimon with NC Policy Watch, and J. Brad Crone with Campaign Connections and a political consultant. On this week's show, we're going to discuss another crisis in the Department of Health and Human Services. We'll look at the political landscape in the upcoming 2014 elections, talk about a water war erupting over a proposed new reservoir in Cleveland County, and as always, we'll ask our panelists to tell us something we don't know. Secretary of Aldona Vaush, the Department of Health and Human Services, was called to the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee to talk about the new NC track system, about continued cost exceeding budget projections, and about a story saying the department withheld key details from their response to a state audit. It's but one more crisis in a department that's been fraught with controversy and problems. Chris, NC Tracks, the new computer system to provide payments to healthcare providers, has had problems from the get-go. And when the secretary was asked if there had been any advance warning the system wasn't ready to go live, she answered no. State Auditor Beth Wood said that wasn't true. She says an audit her agency performed in May told DHHS NC Tracks wasn't ready to go live. And we've been having charges and counter charges flying back and forth. What's your take on all this?
Well, the system clearly wasn't ready. Now, the Secretary Vaush was asked if she was told that it wasn't ready, and she said no. And then her office, her spokesperson later said, well, what we meant was she was told, and we addressed the things that she was told about. So I think that even added to the confusion. The real problem is there were providers that testified at that legislative committee hearing. One fellow from the Cape Fear Valley Medical Center, $4 million worth of chemotherapy drugs still hadn't been reimbursed. It's a huge problem. I thought Jeff Tart, who's also a Republican member of the General Assembly, put it pretty bluntly to the Secretary, saying this is our problem now. We own it. We got to stop blaming the previous administration. We need to fix it. We needed to make sure it was online and working. So I think the days of blaming previous administrations are over, and the McCrory administration needs to step up and say, and first of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows we have yet to hear them really say we have a problem. They need to say things are wrong and we're working on them. That'd be much better than denying it or blaming it on somebody else.
Becki, there's some of these medical providers, particularly some doctors in smaller hospitals, that are saying this delay in the payments is threatening their viability and their ability to be able to stay in business. Back to what Chris was saying, DHHS has said they're working hard to improve the problems and speed up payments. Legislators say it's not good enough. Where are we right now?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where we are right now. I know that
the
department.
Sure where we are right now.
I'm not sure anybody knows where we are, to be honest with you. I think DHHS is honestly trying to work through the problems. I know that there have been some providers that have explained that they need the money, and some checks have been written, those kind of things, to get that money in the hands of people that need it. Clearly it's a hardship, particularly for small physician practices that rely on those reimbursements from Medicaid. But I do believe that the department is doing everything they can to get to the bottom of it. It's a huge problem. It's complicated. It's complex. But I believe that they are working on it as much as they possibly can to get it straightened out.
Brad, you've been very critical of all of this. You say that the January state audit was made to look just as bad as possible so that the McCrory administration could prove how broken the system was, so that they could come in right on a white horse and fix it.
Well, that's why the hearings were so interesting, Tom. The J-Locke hearings held recently were the most damaging hearings of the legislature that I've seen since 1995, when the House Republicans did the DMV investigation in the Jim Hunt period of time. It was singeing. And these were Republican legislators, senators, and House members going after their own party, their own secretary, their own governor, saying it's not working, get it right, fix it.
John, one of the things that, we've got the he said, she said going on, except it's the she said scenario taking place. Isn't it fairly obvious somebody's lying here?
Lying, I think, actually is an unfair term, Tom. It is possible, but it is also possible that Secretary Vaush, for example, answered the question that she heard but didn't answer it fully, didn't explain fully what she meant or what others were doing at the same time. To assume someone is lying is assume that they know what they're saying is false and they're actively trying to deceive. And I'm not arguing that that never happens or that didn't happen in this case, but there are also many situations. I'll give you an example. You alluded earlier to the dispute that arose about a prior audit from State Auditor Brett Wood about Medicaid, North Carolina's Medicaid program, and administrative expense.
Right.
Now, the previous administration was responding and saying that the metrics that the state auditor was using were incorrect, and they offered their own. And Beth Wood, I thought, had a very good answer to that no, you can't use the metrics that were offered. When that particular item was stricken out, I think I would have stricken it out too. For example, they were not measuring administrative costs the same way for managed care companies that they're doing it for the state, and I don't think the numbers are comparable, but even if I'm wrong, I'm not lying about it. It's a difference of opinion. That's not the same thing.
I want to shift to another subject because I want to talk about the issue with Carol Steckel, who was heading up the Medicaid program in North Carolina's DHHS system. She has since left, gone to Florida, working for a company that wants to do business with the state of North Carolina. This looks like a pretty clear conflict of interest. In fact, you've written that to be the case.
It is. It's a clear conflict of interest. She's seen all the RFIs. When they did a request for information, every single company that wanted to do business
should her company not be allowed to?
I think it'd be very, very unwise if North Carolina would give a lot of business to a company that just hired the Medicaid director to go work for them. I think that would not be anybody's best interest.
I also want to talk about Governor McCrory's role has been fairly interesting in this. I mean, he's been pretty quiet about all the mess that's been going on back and forth. Shouldn't we expect the chief executive of North Carolina to I mean, I remember in Jim Hunt's days, whenever anything went wrong, he was right in the middle of it and told us what he was going to do to fix it. What do you think about McCrory's role?
I think what McCrory's done is he has deferred to his Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Eldana Voss, to handle this. He hired her, he charged her with fixing this. He has said this program is broken and it needs to be fixed, and he's looking to her and that department to fix it.
He said it was broken before they came in.
He also said he's proud of her. I want to get to one quick point. The most compelling part of that meeting we haven't talked about yet, when a legislator asked the department, how much money has been spent on these emergency grants to providers that haven't gotten their money? One department official said $65 million. Another department official said $51 million. Another department official, senior official, said $15 million. They were $50 million apart, and these are senior officials in the department. They're $50 million
come on, Chris,
off.
$1 million here, $1 million there. I mean,
thought that was a stunning display.
They can't count.
Well, you can watch NC Spin anytime you want. Just go to our website, ncspin.com, and click on the YouTube button on the right side of the page. We post each week's show on Friday, so view us anytime you like. And while at ncspin.com, be sure to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter, Spin Cycle. Okay, you can also follow us at Twitter at ncspintweets. 4 ways to keep the conversation going: ncspin.com, ncspin on Facebook, at ncspintweets, and Spin Cycle. We look forward to hearing from you. When we come back, we're looking ahead to 2014.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
People always ask us, don't you get tired of driving to the coast every day? We have never said yes. We enjoy bringing the fresh fish to those that don't have time to drive to the coast. The relationships that we have with fishermen in eastern North Carolina are more than business to us. It's more like family. They depend on us and we depend on them. We are proud to work with North Carolina fishermen to bring fresh fish from our dock to your table.
The best part about being a member of a Touchstone Energy Cooperative is that it's your Touchstone Energy Cooperative. Learn more about the power of your co-op membership at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
We now return to NC Spin.
We're months away from the May 2014 primary elections, but already there are signs this is going to be an interesting cycle. The biggest interest is coming from the U.S. Senate race, in which first-term Senator Kay Hagan is going to be seeking re-election, and several Republican challengers are lining up to run against her. With popularity ratings at modern lows, the entire legislature is going to be up for re-election, as will all 13 congressional seats. Brad, Hagan's popularity ratings have dropped a little bit recently, and she's got House Speaker Tom Tillis, Charlotte Pastor Mark Harris, and Kerry Dr. Greg Brannon running against her. It looks like there might be a schism among the Republican ranks between the mainstream and the ultra-conservative. Handicap this race for us.
I think it's going to be the most interesting United States Senate race we've seen since 1984, when you had Jesse Helms and Jimmy Humps.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very spirited primary, I think, as you go through. All the safe bets are on Speaker Tillis. I continue to hear Tillis is having problems raising money, and he's got a chasm within his own caucus, in the sense that you can either be Speaker of the House or run for the United States Senate, but it's going to be tough doing both. So my bet in the Republican primary is don't underestimate the Charlotte preacher, Mark Harris. I've seen him on YouTube. He's really a dynamic speaker. He's calling himself the new Jesse Helms. He's got a good consulting crew and a good campaign team in place. I think Mark Harris is going to be the candidate.
Becki, just how vulnerable is Kay Hagan?
I think she's pretty vulnerable. To Brad's point, I think this is going to be one of the most interesting and probably the most competitive Senate race in the country. It may very well come down to North Carolina, who is elected in North Carolina will determine the majority in the United States Senate.
Right,
so I think she's very vulnerable. I think she's taking this race very seriously already.
I want to move into some of the congressional races and also the legislative races before we leave this segment. John, let's look at some of the congressional races. In the 3rd District, Walter Jones, of course, is running for re-election. Conservatives there have already said they're going to run somebody against him. How vulnerable is Walter?
Not very. There are conservatives who are critical of him and a couple of other incumbent Republicans. They will run primary challengers. I think those primary challengers will lose.
I think it's important to say that, and we say this all the time, but to reinforce it, the districts, and the Democrats did this as well, but the congressional districts, most of these races are over unless there's a primary, and I think that's going to be very rare.
Well, but some of these, there are some extenuating circumstances,
right.
like in the 6th District, where you've got Howard Coble, who has been in poor health for a long time. Is he going to retire? Is he going to run?
Phil Berger Jr., I think the tea leaves are clear. Phil Berger Jr. is running. The district attorney from Rockingham County is going to get in that race, and Howard will have his hands full. I agree with John, though. Walter Jones Jr. is an institution. His father was. It'd take a stick of dynamite to beat him.
How about over in the 7th District, Chris, where Mike McIntyre has been under a lot of controversy, and David Rouser's already announced he's going to run against him again.
And that was one of the closest races in the country, and I expect it'll be very close again, because that's one of the few, too, maybe, that is really up for grabs, and there'll be a ton of money, especially if the Democrats can make some gains in the U.S. House, as I think they can after the shutdown controversy. It'll be very close.
Becki,
It's looking like Renee Elmers may very well have 1 or 2 primary challenges as well.
All right, we've got the 4 freshmen in Congress. We've got in the 8th District Richard Hudson. We've got Robert Pittenger in the 9th, Mark Meadows in the 11th, and George Holding in the 13th. Any of them facing any problems?
I'm not hearing anything so far. They seem to be doing a good job. I'm not hearing the rumbling that we are in, of course, the Mike McIntyre race, Renee Elmers,
I think Richard
the
Hudson
others.
really is a bright, shining star for the Republicans, and I think he can do some service in the United States House and then come back to North Carolina and be a formidable candidate for governor.
But, well, and I think I agree with everything that's been said, but let's don't say they're doing a good job and that's why they're going to be reelected.
Wait a minute, what are you doing agreeing with everything?
Well, no, listen, I mean, Mark Meadows is one of the people who led the fight to hold up to shut down the government and maybe do the debt. So he's not doing a good job. He's in a safe district.
Brad, let's look at the General Assembly. Public opinions polls show they're at an all-time low in popularity. Chris's point is well taken. The districts have been gerrymandered to the point where it looks difficult to see a loss of control in either the House or the Senate. What are you expecting?
It is the pot calling the kettle black. The politicians are picking their voters, not the voters picking the politicians. With that said, the Democrats are going to pick up substantial seats in the state House next year. I don't know if they'll take it back. I'm saying 10 to 11 seat gain in the House. Probably,
so that'll cut their veto-proof majority.
Absolutely, 3 or 4 to 5 seats in the Senate.
John, who's going to be? I mean, we had some interesting developments this week. Tom Tillis has already announced, obviously, he's not going to be Speaker again because he's running for the U.S. Senate. But I was sort of surprised. Ruth Samuelson made an announcement this week that she wasn't even going to run for re-election, and Skip Stam said he wouldn't stand for the Speaker's seat. Who's the favorite now to be the new House Speaker?
There's not a favorite, but there are a number of potential candidates. Mike Hager from Rutherford County, Tim Moore from Cleveland County,
Tim
Moffitt from Buncombe County, David Lewis
How about
from
Nelson
Harnett
Dahl?
County.
Tom
That would be a
Murray.
possibility. And Edgar Starnes, of course, is the majority leader. I think Brad is exuberant and understandably so, but I actually still think 2014 will be a moderately Republican year. It will be a health care election. It will be largely federal, and the Republicans will be fine in the legislature.
Well, that was the thing I was going to ask. We know we've got a lot of unrest out there among teachers, minorities, realtors, other groups across the state. Is it going to be, as things now look, a Republican year, a Democrat year? Can you tell?
Now, I think the polling showing the unaffiliated voter, which is 25% of your total votes cast in the state of North Carolina, they're upset. They're leaning Democrat in the generic ballot at the congressional level and at the legislative level. It's going to be a big Democrat year next year.
But I think some of these reforms that the Republicans have put in place, as we see the benefits of those roll out, I think it's going to affect families and business owners in North Carolina that will be affected by that, with tax reform, regulatory reform, some of the education reforms, as well as transportation
you're anticipating
reform.
there are going to be positive outcomes to them.
I think so, absolutely.
And if they're not, will it hurt Republicans?
I think if people have the perception that North Carolina is still going in the wrong direction, the Republicans will be the incumbent party and they would lose some seats. But like I said, I think the federal issues will probably dominate 2014.
But that's why I think what's really interesting is to see what effect this recent the brouhaha in Washington, where people clearly overwhelmingly blame the Republicans, their approval rating has gone down. If that lingers and they try it again in January, this is going to stick to them at some point.
After these messages, we're going to talk about a proposed new reservoir.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
It's true. Farming is different than it was 50 years ago. We know consumers have questions about how our food is grown today. North Carolina livestock farmers want you to know that they're using the most responsible and caring farming practices to feed our state.
ncanimalag.com.
The North Carolina Medical Society is committed to a healthier North Carolina. We feel, as an organization representing over 14,000 physicians, that we have a responsibility and an obligation to help our citizens become more healthy. And by doing this, we want to help educate them about ways in which they need to keep themselves healthy through good nutrition, exercise, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. These ingredients will help not only individual citizens become and maintain a healthier outlook on their lives, but also help contribute to having a healthier state.
We now return to NC Spin.
As our population continues to grow, there's going to be increased demand for clean water. But a water war has erupted over a proposal to dam up 1,400 acres along the First Broad River in rural Cleveland County, about an hour west of Charlotte. Advocates say the First Broad has suffered from drought conditions in 2002 that required mandatory water restrictions, and new sources for water are needed. Opponents say this is nothing but a thinly veiled economic development project, and there are far cheaper alternatives to what might cause damage to the environment along the First Broad. John, this project has been under discussion now for more than 10 years, and it's been stalled by state and federal agencies like DENR and the Army Corps of Engineers. Who's right in this battle for this reservoir? Or is anybody right?
Given the rhetoric of the 2013 legislative session, I'm tempted to say, obviously, local control should rule out. Why should people in Raleigh tell the people in Cleveland County who clearly want to do this, not that they can't do it? That
and
is
this
not
would
the
be
role,
unusual because
that's not the role of state government to tell localities what to do. They want to do this in part because they think it would be a secure water source. Now, they do have cheaper alternatives, getting water, for example, from Forest City.
Right.
There are a number of communities in western North Carolina that used to have lots of mills, and they had a lot of water capacity. The mills, in many cases, have shut down. They have excess water capacity, and they can sell it. So that's true, but the Cleveland County folks say that's not as secure a water system. What if there's a drought that affects all of the communities in our area? We're going to not be the first to get the scarce water. We're going to be the last. So there is a debate here, but obviously there's also an economic development angle, because if you create the next Lake Norman, then you create all the opportunities
real estate and
to making money.
We all know that they want to build the lake so they can put the Catawba Indian Casino on the lake and then sell the lots along the lake.
Why didn't I think of that?
And gamble.
Yeah,
That makes
there are
good
conflicts
sense.
of interest, Chris, charges flying back and forth here. Some powerful legislators, former legislators, either represent or have some financial interest in some of these projects surrounding the lake. How big a problem is this conflict of interest
Well,
thing?
it's interesting because, it's in a rural part of the state, although it's not that far from Charlotte. I think if this was in an urban area, you'd see much more coverage of it. The News Observer did a long story. Mike Hayer, we mentioned his name earlier, he actually went to Far City and tried to convince and tell them they need to stop agreeing to sell water to Cleveland County or they're going to get in trouble. Tim Moore has done some work. The local legislators are involved to a point that I think it really will. There'll be some hard questions if this ever comes to pass about what their role was, who's paying them. It's very complicated.
There are even charges, Becki, that Diener is just rolling over and playing dead and allowing this thing to go through after so many years of sort of opposing it. They're now easing restrictions. Is Diener playing the proper role here?
I think so, and I think this really is a question. It is a question of economic development. As John mentioned, the Milltown, Cleveland County has one of the highest. I don't know if it's the highest, but they have higher than average unemployment in Cleveland County. Manufacturing jobs have left. There's talk of them coming of trying to lure manufacturing back. If you're trying to get businesses to come to North Carolina, to Cleveland County, you need a reliable water source to do that.
Well, let's be clear, though. You just said Diener was rolling over and playing dead. Tom, they have been rolling over and playing dead since January the 5th. The single day McCrory walked in, took an oath on the Bible, Diener has been practically non-existent.
I'm not quite sure it's that bad, but I hear what you're saying. Republicans, John, are saying that environmentalists will never see a water project that they'll
That's
go.
a legitimate objection.
Are they being obstructionist?
I would like to know an example of a major reservoir dam or any other major project that environmentalists have not attempted to obstruct. They might be right. They are right sometimes.
All right, I got 20 seconds.
Case, they just like
20 seconds left in this. What's going to happen with the Klein project? Very quickly.
I think it'll go through.
Chris?
I think it's going to take longer than they think. It'll be very slow.
I don't think it'll go through.
The project will be resolved with the federal government. That's the real barrier.
All right. After these messages, we're going to ask our panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
You trust your family physician to care for you and your family. We treasure that trust and are committed to providing the best care possible for all North Carolinians. It's time for Medicaid reform, but not without input from North Carolina's family physicians. Medicaid reform will impact health care for all of us. Tell state leaders you want your physician involved. We need Medicaid reform that's good for North Carolina. To sign our petition of support, visit rnchealthcare.com.
North Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, but we consistently rank in the bottom third for state health. Poor health choices and inactivity cost our state $54 billion a year, dollars that could be saved through healthier living. We can do better, North Carolina. That's why NC Spin is working with health and community organizations to launch a Healthier NC, an education campaign and challenge to live healthier lives. Join us at ahealthierNC.com.
One of the best parts of our show is when we ask our panelists to tell us something we don't know. They get to choose the topic and sound off on it for a few seconds. John Hood, tell us something we don't know.
Tom, we talked earlier in the show about the problems with software in North Carolina for Medicaid and other programs not working very well. At least it works, unlike the Obamacare exchange software, which has been a disaster. And more generally, people are upset about the premium increases they're now seeing from their insurance companies. Democrats know this would be very dangerous in 2014. They need somebody to blame, and Republicans don't really fit because everybody knows they're against Obamacare. So look for lots of additional campaigning by Democrats against the big, bad insurance companies, including Blue Cross here in North Carolina. They will be the villains of the story, according to the Democrats.
Okay. Becki, tell us something we don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you something you need to know. There is a fabulous exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of Art Porsche by design. They brought in two
Well, that's
dozen
just
fabulous cars.
No.
That's what you don't know. What you don't know is the curator of this fabulously put together exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of Art is Chris's wife Barbara, and it will be on exhibit until January 20th. So go out and see it. It's
And
just
kudos to Barbara Wiedemann.
yes.
All right,
Absolutely.
Chris, tell us something we don't know.
Gosh.
Did she take yours?
No. I was glad you said that. We've talked a lot about who's going to run for Speaker of the House now that Ruth Samuelson, who was a leading candidate, has decided not to run. We've mentioned a few names here: Tim Moore, David Lewis, Mike Hager. I will go out on a limb now and predict that the next Speaker of the House will not be any of the people that we've named. There'll be a couple other people who are going to run that we haven't even thought of, who will be very younger members. Somebody out of the blue, I think, will catch people by surprise.
Brad Crone, tell us something we don't know.
Well, Tom, I've been continuing to talk about the IT problems our court system is facing. And they're structural all across the state and all 100 counties. Talked with some folks over at AOC this week. They are making movement, and I think you're going to see positive resolutions coming out. They have a new IT director coming on board, and there's progress being made.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read my weekly column, visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we've got a really special show. Some of the smartest young people in North Carolina, our 4-H'ers, will be with us. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.